Let's see if that works. So it was really a conversation, I think, with from Akiva Adlerstein and Moshe Chaim as well, to do something a little bit different. We learn plenty Torah, Baruch Hashem, which is always important, but there are topics that people are interested in that maybe are not strictly speaking totally Torah, although they relate to Torah, obviously. And so he suggested we should do something, young professionals, and you see, you're young and you're a professional. So maybe there's hope for me. So I want to make very clear at the outset, this is going to be a mini-series. If I have time, we'll aim to do it every Monday. But a mini-series. How many will be in the series? We'll see how it goes along. And obviously feedback, and happy to have it interactive. Now, at the outset, a disclaimer. Very often rabbis talk about science, and they've swallowed a few quotes. And I hope I don't fall into that category. So I'm not a scientist. I'm certainly not classically trained. And I have not studied science, and certainly not the math side of things properly. At the same time, I have read quite widely. And it is a topic which interests me a lot. Some of you being in my home have seen some of those books. They have been read. I don't claim to have memorized everything, but I think there is a lot of misinformation. Let me give an introduction. And the introduction is as follows. And tonight we are not going to begin to tackle any of the specific or technical issues which we'll get to later, such as the age of the universe, which is always the big one, evolution, yawn. Okay, but we'll have to kind of deal with those sort of things. But those are details. What I'd like to do is go from macro to micro, and tonight will be much more about definitions. It's always important when you use words, when you use phrases. Mm-hmm. What do they mean? I mean, let's just take, for example, just before we even get into it, the word proof. Mm-hmm. The simple word proof. What constitutes a proof? What is subject to proof? So, as you know, the word proof exists on a continuum. There is only one discipline, to the best of my knowledge, in which it is rigorous, absolute, and 100%. And I think that is maths. The minute you begin to move across the spectrum, then the concept of a proof and the level of accuracy that it needs to be is going to mean something else until you move all the way across. And I'm not, of course, I don't want to be rude to the social sciences or the so-called soft sciences, or especially as you go across the psychology, sociology, whatever. There the word proof is going to mean something very, very different, and we accept that. And therefore we need to ask ourselves, when we will talk about the existence of God, of Hashem at some point, but before we get there, we need to ask ourselves, what exactly are the fields of competency? What would it even mean? We have to know always, as ever, the first thing is to agree your terms. When a Jew says God, what do they mean? When an Orthodox Jew says God, what do they mean? Proof. So that's something we're going to have to go into. But what I want to do before I go any further, as I said, tonight will be much more of a general introduction, where we're going to talk about the parameters. What does science mean? What is science competent to pass judgment on? How does it do it? What are the methods? We'll come to that a little bit. But I want to make a general comment, and this is something that I'm going to start off with a mashal. Imagine you want to really understand, you're a social anthropologist, and you want to go down the Amazon River, and you want to really do an in-depth study of a particular tribe that is fascinating because it's been shielded from the outside world, etc. What are the first things you need to do? The first things you need to do, of course, is inoculate yourself. Make sure that you are not going to subject yourself and your immune system to some pathogens which are going to kill you. That's the first thing, right? And the second thing, equally important, is make sure that you're not going to kill them by infecting them with some of the things that you have picked up from the Western world. You need to do both those things. Fine. Those are preparatory. although they say something interesting if you think about it. And the third, and perhaps the most important thing is, I believe, I'm no social anthropologist, but I believe what you have to do is what's called to go native. Don't bring any of your 21st century cultural baggage and preconceived notions about justice, about morality, about the role of women, about medicine, about anything, food, hygiene. If you want to really understand them, you need, as much as is possible, we all have biases, and we'll talk about bias tonight, but tabula rasa, as much as is possible, be conscious of it and just go native. Eat with them, live with them, sing, dance, get to really under the skin to see the world through their eyes. And then you'll be able to give an objective, honest report of what it is that you have seen, if that's what you're trying to do. Generally speaking, when we come across this difficult and often vexatious topic of the so-called clash between religion and science, and both camps theoretically are at fault, can be at fault for this, and we'll talk a little bit about both in a minute. There's three possible ways to approach this. You either have apologetics, polemics, or context. This is my understanding. I'll explain what I mean. Let's be a bit light-hearted. So let's say we're talking about feminism, right? So women's rights and the way that women are treated as equal citizens of equal worth. So what you will sometimes hear is some people saying, you think you're feminine? You have no idea how progressive the Torah is. The Torah gave women civil rights and protective rights and financial rights long before society decided to. Fun fact. There's a lawyer in the room, but I know I'm not sure that's your area. But does anybody know in the Western world when rape within marriage became illegal? I guess.
In the 90s in Germany.
Correct, in the 1990s in Germany. Very, very, very recent. The notion that so you could really turn around and say, whereas in the Gemara, in the Torah and Daf Chaf, it's been forbidden for thousands of years. So you see, you think you're progressive. Haha, we're much more progressive than you. And that is intellectually false. For two reasons. First of all, because what you've done is you have accepted the supremacy and the authenticity of a value system, which may or may not be good. That's not the point. But you're attempting to shoehorn Torah into it. In other words, there is a perceived clash. This is purely, I'm being objective here, right? There's a perceived clash of values, which may or may not be correct. And the way I'm resolving it is by accepting that this set of values, modern, Western, liberal, democratic values, must be correct. And therefore, I need to now research within Torah to see how I can shoehorn, it's the word we use in English, yeah? How I can shoehorn Torah into progressive. That's intellectually dishonest. The other way to do it is polemics, which is tub thumping. In English we say tub thumping, where you shout and you bang and you say the Torah was given by Hashem, of course it's moral, of course, and you're all a bunch of modern degenerates and you've got no sense of morality. And that's not, it may or may not be correct, but it's not a dialogue. It doesn't achieve anything, and I'm not at all convinced that is the right way to go about things. It's not even about, we're talking about the response. We're talking about where people are meant to be talking to each other. We don't talk to each other anymore. Mm-hmm. Yeah? Narrow casting, World Sex used to call it. We're talking in an echo chamber. And today, the algorithm has already worked it out. It somehow sensed that I am, say, conservative, and it will only feed me the news feed and all the things which just justify, you see, I must be right. Look at Google says so. And the algorithm has realized what you read and what you see, and it works it all out. And because it's going to tailor the shopping preferences, of course, to it, at the end of the day, don't forget Google is there it's a marketing company. It's there to make money. And it therefore needs to get, drive the revenue. And that's all it is. So there's no dialogue. So nobody is getting from that. may I suggest, and this is what we need to try and do, is to look at these disciplines within context, but their own context. Their own context. Torah, because at the end of the day, that really interests me more than science as much as I am interested in science, but Torah is a worldview of the Creator. And he does talk about laws of nature, by the way. Chok uzman nosan lohem, chok nosan v'lo ya'avor. There are laws of nature. And that itself, by the way, is a fascinating, I don't want to digress, but I'm just going to mention it. This is something that early scholars, philosophers and scientists thought about. We have somehow we have an expectation that the world should be rational. That's a fascinating concept. Why should it be rational? We have that expectation and the idea that there must be laws of nature. Who said there are laws? Who says it's rational? Where does that even come from? Rationality. It's a side topic. I just want to mention it.
What do you mean rational? Like cause and effect?
That it is that it operates not in some sort of chaotic, haphazard manner, and therefore we go on the search. So, for example, today the grand unified theory they're all looking for that is the simplification and the unification of all the different branches of knowledge, so we can uncover a core. We assume that there are rational laws. Who said there are any? Aristotle, okay, but that came from a particular... Correct.
Categories and all the words.
And maths. Maths is another fascinating thing, and not for now, and I'm certainly no mathematician, but it is the language, so to speak, numbers within which Hashem wrote the world in many, many respects. But we'll come back to that. That's by the way. So what we're going to try and do is, yes?
Okay, I mean, it's not a law. Like a law of nature is not a law.
You're asking me, you're telling me I'm not with you.
It's not imposed upon a system, it's observance, observing.
We're going to come to that. So,
and if it's not right, you didn't observe it correctly.
What do you mean it's not right?
If your prediction is not right.
Oh, so if you mean Karl Popper and stuff, we're going to come to that soon. Just give me a chance. But I was just making a general observation about the fact, and philosophers and scientists do talk about it, and there's much more stuff on it, which it was just a throwaway remark really, that somehow and this is more of a question on scientists, as you'll see in a minute. The more you postulate that the world has no point and no meaning, and it just is, the more absurd it becomes to then have the expectation that there ought to be order from a philosophical standpoint. And scientists themselves acknowledge it. That was just
there is some periods of time, even of no time, the Big Bang theory, that there's no laws, no cognition possible. There is some theoretical...
You have to say that a bit clearer, maybe of Deutsch.
Laut der Big Bang, also
ja.
Urknalltheorie, es gibt die ersten Stadien der Entstehung der Welt, die sind weder zeitlich, noch mathematisch, noch philosophisch, noch...
Oh, you're talking about the singularity?
Yeah.
Right.
No, even before.
There is no before. Before the singularity, there is no before.
No,
that's
before, between the singularity and the world, we know this.
No.
There's some stages which are not included in when the atom structure is not given and so on.
And first of all, I'm not sure what you mean by that. I mean, Steve Weinberg's The First 3 Minutes is probably the classic on this, and I'm going to actually reference Steve tonight. Yeah. But I'm not sure why that is. Again, I'm just making a comment. It was a throwaway. I shouldn't do that. I should stay to the script. So the point is, we want to begin to explore, and I should really say at the outset, because tonight you're going to see some things, depending on how far we manage to get. And I don't want you to misunderstand it. Science is amazing. Science has done incredible things. We are so much better off, broadly speaking, as a result of science. But we need to be very clear as to the methods that science uses and what is science and what isn't science. And we'll come to that in a minute. I've probably said enough as an introduction. There's a lot more to be said. I just found this cute meme thing, which I just thought was funny. So that's just as simple as that. That's because it's going to get a lot more dense very soon. Okay, so you've seen this, yeah? We both searchers for answers, strict laws and practices, lectures, big heavy books, long robes, blows stuff up. That was a bit edgy. Says God is man-made, says man is God-made. Okay. I'm reminded of the, in England there was I forget which one of the sort of the Monty Python chevra, who said, found a wonderful graffiti in a toilet, and it said, one of them said, God is dead, Nietzsche. And then the one beneath it said, Nietzsche is dead, God. But anyway, well, let's move on. Here is going to get a little bit more. How do I do this here? Let's see. Oh, there we go. Right. Okay. So we're going to. So there's a few slides where I'm just going to be again. I'm no logician, but we're going to do just some very, very basic stuff so that we understand a little bit, even about the machlokas and the internal machlokas that have existed in terms of how we go about things. So, from a young age, people are taught about the scientific method for proving theories. You first observe, then you research the subject, then you hypothesize about what might be going on, then you build an experiment and test your hypothesis. Stop there for a second. In other words, the assumption and the expectation is that you first start with a blank slate. I don't have a particular view or perspective. I observe something in the sky. Say, what is that? Fascinating. I wonder what it is. I have no view or inclination or leaning. That is possibly or theoretically or maybe ideally how things should work in science. They don't. Not by a long shot. But we need to see. So then we're trying to classify this. So you observe something, you say, that's interesting, you research it, you do multiple observations, you look at things. Then you hypothesize, you try and work backwards. It's inductive logic, as we're going to see. You try and work and say, well, is there some way that I can simplify this? We have an intuitive feeling that things are simpler than they are, and that itself is a fascinating topic. But we do. And we see, well, let me test that hypothesis. And you test it and you observe, you build an experimental basis, you analyze the data, and you finally report your conclusions. According to most people's primary school, this is the way scientists produce new ideas and theories, but very few, if any, scientists use this method to develop new theories. I'm not going to talk about it tonight, but I just want to throw out something. It's fascinating to note that many revolutionary ideas were produced by brilliant minds in their 20s, when they had not yet been sufficiently, I'm going to use the word indoctrinated, and I will defend it later, to accept the everybody knows that ... There are only so many planets. But it took an amateur, William Herschel, to observe Uranus and to say, no, that's another planet. It's another one. It had been observed 25 times in the decade before, but dismissed because everybody knew there weren't so many. It was because he was an amateur. You understand? Dirac, Einstein, and others. They were, yes, gutsy and feisty enough, but young. They had not accepted. And we'll see more about that. We'll see more about that later. Okay. Sorry, this is a bit dense. We'll run through it quickly. So, to learn the real methods, we've got to go back to the work of Francis Bacon. Just quickly, Francis Bacon was an English philosopher in 1561, studied at Cambridge, He was accused of corruption, fine. In this work, he describes the process of inductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning is a way of coming up with a general principle based on many observations. In contrast, deductive reasoning is a typical logical reasoning. If you have some true premise, you reach a true conclusion. That conclusion is a certainty. However, in inductive reasoning, you make an assumption based on the evidence that you have. There's always a chance that exists for being wrong in science. Generally in science, we're surrounded by errors. Errors due to the tools and machines we use, errors due to some approximation, statistical errors related, and so on. And because of these errors, there is never a 100% certainty something is true. There's always the plus minus, right? I'll move on from this. There's more to say on this, but I'm going to keep it So we have 95 or 99% confidence, depending on the experiment. That is why inductive reasoning is closer to scientific methods many scientists use. You have certain observations, you test and measure them, you present a likely explanation. In inductive reasoning, you find observations of the particular, and you move from there to a general. And as said so by Darwin himself, he used this Baconian method to give his theory of evolution. But there is another method, and that is, you can read this later, I'll send you out the slides later. Karl Popper is considered to be the grandfather of the philosophy of science, and he said as follows, put it simply, he said, if you cannot theoretically falsify this and show it to be untrue, it doesn't even count as it's not even a theory. You have to be able, in theory at least, to prove that this is not true. And if you can't do that, if you can't do that, then it's not within the realm of science. Science has nothing to say about it. Think about the implication of that for an infinite spiritual being. Okay? Just something to think about.
Repeat that? I mean,
Sorry?
I get it.
It's known as the falsification principle. In order for something, in other words, you can't just look at something, whether you move from the specific to the general to the specific, inductive or deductive, and you come up with a hypothesis. It has to be something where, in theory, it would be possible to show that what you are suggesting is false. And if you can't do that, is his suggestion, that it isn't within the realm of science, and you can't. And he.
Well, that's what you're trying to do, though.
Sorry.
That's what you're trying to do, though.
Well, according to him, that's what you should be trying to do. And it gets a bit messy, because he says that Darwin came about it one way, Darwin himself writes that he came about it the other way. But the point is just to think about I like this a bit more, a bit lighter. Bertrand Russell illustrates this by life as it seems to a turkey. Every day it's fed by its owner. Being a scientific turkey, it concludes that this is a rule of nature, that you get fed every day. The Wednesday before Thanksgiving, it discovers the difference between probability and certainty when it's sent off to the Schlachtes. This, the so-called problem of induction, is insoluble. Science rests on the faith that, in Einstein's words, God does not play dice with the universe. It can't be proved, but it works. And that's back to the expectation of things running in a certain predictable way. Interesting that Einstein... Now, and this is just a whimsical thing before we get deeper. Alfred North Whitehead, who very famously collaborated with Bertrand Russell on maths and logic, and he wrote the following, as we're going to see. Scientists who get animated by the purpose of proving that they are purposeless constitute an interesting subject for study. What does he mean? We'll see. You're going to see in 1 minute. You're going to see in 1 minute what he means by that. Okay. So, what we're going to do now is we're going to look at the world a little bit. We're going to look at the world of an atheist. We want to get into their heads, right? We want to understand how do they see the world. I'm going to try very hard in these, that all the people that I quote are not second-rate nobodies that nobody's ever heard of. Okay, these are all published. Most of them that I'll be quoting are Nobel laureates and very well known and respected in their field, because otherwise you can always find somebody who says something. Okay, just to be clear. So, the world of the atheist. He wrote, Peter Walker, space physicist, Rice University, the supreme arrogance of religious thinking, that a carbon-based bag of mostly water on a speck of iron silicate dust around a boring dwarf star in a minor galaxy, in an underpopulated local group of galaxies in an unfashionable suburb of a supercluster, would look up at the sky and declared it was all made that I could exist, is crazy.
What?
Why? Because if you have a sense of the vastness of the universe, I'm going to talk about that, the vastness of the universe, it is, and the fact that according to science, we're going to see, we're not going to really deal with the origin of life tonight, that'll probably be the next lecture. We'll talk about the origin of life. There is no reason that anything should exist, anything more than nothing. It just happened. It just is. It has no value or meaning whatsoever. And therefore, from that perspective, he looks up at the sky and says that somebody should think that there's a reason, and it should be for me, is incredible arrogance. There is no reason to life. There is no meaning. It has no meaning. We just are. The end. Now that creates lots of problems. We'll see in a minute. Give me a chance.
Once again, you put it on the same logical fallacy you started this whole show with. You are viewing science through a moral-based perspective, and it was never meant to be viewed as.
But that's not me. That's why I'm quoting them. That's not me. So you're right. I must not fall into the trap of saying scientists are terrible, amoral people. They're not. But we're going to examine, that's why I'm looking at the world. We need to understand how, specifically the atheist scientist, not all scientists are atheists, although in the only study that I've been able to come across, the vast majority of them were. But that's another story.
But he's not talking about science. I mean,
okay, then that comes to the next point. Then on the basis of what authority is he speaking?
Or not? He just.
That is the next point. So here's the next point. And I'm jumping ahead. You're jumping ahead, and that is, indeed, you're right. On the basis of what authority does somebody who is competent in the realm of biology, for example, on what basis does that necessarily give them any competence or authority to talk about matters of morality any more or less than any other individual? That's a very valid point. I accept and agree with your point. The point is, and especially as we're going to get to the new atheists, not tonight, but when we will see that they absolutely have arrogated that platform for themselves in their own words. You will see. You have to trust me. Give you a bit of patience. Sorry, they do. That's a fact. I agree with you that they shouldn't. That is my point. I'm with you.
It's like saying everything I say is a medical opinion.
Indeed, yes. Yeah. Yeah. If you read any work of the new atheists, you'll see this. Okay, Peter Walker. This is very interesting. I only came across this recently in research. I hadn't come across this before. Martin Luther King. Interesting quote. He wrote, "There may be a conflict between soft-minded religionists and tough-minded scientists, but not between science and religion. Their respective worlds are different and their methods are dissimilar. Science investigates, religion interprets. Science gives man knowledge, which is power. Religion gives man wisdom, which is control. Science deals mainly with facts. Religion deals mainly with values. The two are not rivals, they are complementary." Fascinating. I'd never seen that quote before. To me, it was news anyway.
Very well put.
Sorry?
Very well put.
Indeed, very elegant. And, of course, we're going to be quoting liberally from Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs. He wrote a book on this topic called The Great Partnership. So, and a number of the quotes are taken from this. And he, again, as a wordsmith, his ability to craft a sentence in a way that is both pithy and meaningful speaks for itself. Science will explain how, but not why. It talks about what is, not what ought to be. Science is descriptive, not prescriptive. It can tell us about causes, but it cannot tell us about purposes. Indeed, science disavows purposes. Now that last phrase is a very strong one. Science is telling us, it doesn't tell us, it doesn't step away, it doesn't abstain from is there or isn't there a purpose. It disavows purpose.
The case of Aristotle is not true.
Aristotle, if you're calling Aristotle a scientist, we're talking much more modern, and I'm going to provide examples for everything. Freud. The moment a man questions the meaning and value of life, he is sick, since objectively neither has any existence. By asking this question, one is merely admitting to a store of unsatisfied libido, well, that's Freud after all, unsatisfied libido to which something else must have happened, a kind of fermentation leading to sadness and depression. The minute, says Freud, that you stop and say, what is this all about? What is the purpose of life? What is it? The minute you've done that, you are sick. You're a sick person. Refuah shalema. As a en passant, really, übrigens, I think you say, no? Really, by the way, is so I was teaching J Academy this morning, and on my way out, I asked them what the next thing they were doing, and they said they're reading Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. So I asked them whether they knew the story of Viktor Frankl and the Lubavitcher Rebbe. They said they didn't, so I just sent it through to them. And I won't go into the whole thing now, but it's absolutely fascinating. What we need to understand, for example, what Viktor Frankl was doing as a Talmud of Freud and Jung was going against everything that they taught. And he nearly gave up. And he got a message one day from the Lubavitcher Rebbe to say, don't give up. And that led to it's a fascinating story. It's published, I can send you the links, it's just by the way. But this is it, this was the world. This is the world of we'll see what world it is. Stephen Jay Gould, paleontologist, probably the world's foremost paleontologist. Okay? So remember, his professor of geology, Harvard, right? This is he's very famous for overlapping magisteria is his thing. So he is a professor of geology. Gershon, you're going to hear what he's got to say now. We are here because one odd group of fishes had a peculiar fin anatomy that could transform into legs for terrestrial creatures. Because the earth never froze entirely during an ice age. Because a small and tenuous species arising in Africa 250,000 years ago has managed so far to survive by hook and by crook. We may yearn for a higher answer, but none exists. He's probably the greatest paleontologist in the last generation. Professor of geology at Harvard, Nobel laureate, talking about reason, meaning, purpose.
But this is his own opinion, not his opinion as a professor of Harvard, right?
Well,
Finish one.
where does one finish and the other begin?
So
and
I
it would
can directly say where I finished. Before the last
Right.
sentence, they're finished.
So
The last sentence is
Yes.
his conclusion, which has nothing to do with his
right, but
position.
he is certainly using the platform and the authority of his well-deserved, no doubt. I'm no paleontologist. What do I know? But this is what they do. This is what Dawkins, Hitchens.
That's because they're people, and people are there.
But they hide behind this aura of science. I'm a man of science, and therefore
there's no person who is perfect.
it's more than that. It's a dogma. We're going to come to that. It's scientism, not science. Nobody has anything against science.
So you want to prove whether there's a structure behind it, whether there is a
correct.
religion.
We're going to build up the case for that. Okay. Exactly. Very good. That's very well put. In other words, let's say I were to, I don't know, I think what we would need to do is a very careful study of where did he say this? Was it in a plenary in Harvard? What was he on a panel for? Was he writing in Science or Nature or Scientific American? Or was he having a chat with his friends down the pub? Kind of thing. So it's not just about being sensitive to the impact that your words will have. So we need to discover more. Well, we're only beginning. We're only just beginning. Trust me, there's much more where that came from. Yes.
All the science from the beginning in the 18th century
Yes.
was based on the assumption that we want to explain the world without God. We don't need God.
That was both implicit and to some extent
That's
explicit.
Every outcome from this approach could be only we have no need.
We have no need for God. That's
Yeah,
true.
that's-
Whether that was, I'm not a conspiracy theorist.
Yeah.
So that's a topic really not so much for tonight, although there is overlap. One would need to examine the evidence as to whether that was explicit or only implicit. And I do believe it was implicit. There was no, and we'll come to that a little bit. Dessler talks about this as well, but he doesn't suggest that it was. I mean, God was put on trial, to quote de Tocqueville and all. There's no question about it. He was. I'll just make a quick comment. I saw something recently. Just by the way, I just happened to come across a comment, and it rang a bell. Within a few weeks, I came up in very different places. A comment both from Sam Harris, if you've heard of him, and A.C. Grayling, who is a professor of philosophy, probably one of the most eminent philosophers in the UK, certainly, in Cambridge. And they both said a very interesting thing. They both said that they resented the use of the term atheist. And they both made the following point. I'm going to put it to you because I've given it a little bit of thought. And they say, imagine all the stamp collectors in the world. The stamp collectors come along and they have even if it's not pejorative or negative, but they now have a term to describe the non-stamp collectors. He says, why should we be called atheists? You're stamp collectors, you believe in a God, we don't, but that's not, why should, it's a bit like me being considered ultra-orthodox. In other words, somebody at the right, at the far left of Judaism moved the goalposts and all of a sudden I'm ultra. As I like to say, I think I'm not frum enough, I should be much more frum, I don't always manage to keep every halacha. Unfortunately, did I just say that on film? I did. I have to do teshuva. I'm not ultra, but what happened is I've allowed myself to be defined by other things. So Sam Harris and AC Grayling made this point, which it got me for a minute. And let's see if you can work out a response to that. How would you say that? And he says this in various different places. Why should we be even called atheists? I'm not atheist. Why should I let your belief or value or activity then define me as not being that? Why is that correct? Why should that be so?
It's not what you believe, it's about belief in the purpose. Believe in general. And if you want to go like all the way back, use science yourself. Use paleontology and work out the way that there is the most human scientists say that the whole reason for settlement in human societies ever to begin with was worship of a deity. That's what made us become agricultural.
So how have you answered? You've lost me. He's complaining that others have been allowed to do something and then define him as being not that.
Yes.
Where is
the purpose? The scientific broad basis to say that the reason why we are not hunters and gatherers anymore, but a cultural society, which he bases his whole belief system on, of rationality and of human becoming rational and moral on his own. No?
You've lost me.
Through cultural development. That's where our morality comes from, not from God. But
have you answered his? I'm sorry, I've lost.
He admits that the whole thing that started it was worship.
Okay, so I think you might be trying to say the following. Let me know if you are, and if not, you can make your point again because I just didn't understand you. I'm sorry. Okay. I think the answer is probably you're much more sophisticated than me. I thought about this a little bit, and I think that I would turn around to Sam Harris if he ever asked me, and I would say as follows. I'd say it's because of history. It's because for thousands of years, society and every institution which furthered society, from the family to the community to the village to the country to everything, was God's at some point, was the central unit of value and trust. And as Lord Sachs writes it somewhere, he says, there are no tax evaders in the kingdom of heaven. Religion underwrote its own morality. There are no tax evaders in the kingdom of heaven. And that was it. And yes, because 200 years ago, you upstarts came along, there was only theism. Everybody in the world collected stamps for thousands of years. And you came along and you said, you don't want to collect stamps. Fine, don't collect stamps. I'm not forcing you to collect stamps. But then don't get annoyed with me if I call you a non-stamp collector. Because in the larger picture, there were stamp collectors forever. And this is a relatively new phenomenon starting in the... is that what you were trying to say? That's what I would say. Which I think is logical.
This is a logical conclusion.
One second, listen, I'm sorry, I did cut him off, so it wasn't fair. Is that what you were trying to say?
I'm guessing yes, but also trying to use history, like...
So was I.
More in the general sense. I wanted to use specific history.
You were saying, he says, he can't say that the religion is not important if we are here, have a society because of religion, because of...
He'll say, well, don't get started on that, because they will say that we managed to be here despite all of the evil things that society has done. And we'll come to that in a minute.
But there's no basis for that.
Well, he thinks there is. So we can go rather circular.
Because we are not the only humanoids.
Sorry?
We are not the only humanoids in the history of the world. But we're the only ones who build a sophisticated society.
Yeah, science did.
I mean,
he'll tell you science did that. It was from the industrial age. I'm being devil's advocate. So, okay.
Well, that was the first thing that distinguished us from animal speech.
Okay, I think we're. Can I move on? Can I move on? Because I think your point is more sophisticated than me. Yes.
I think you misinterpret the statements. The assumption was there is no explanation needed for God. So God is no explanation to this world.
We haven't even got there yet, but go on.
Now we have find something which explains, which works.
Okay.
So this is a question. The next question is why we should have some delusions like God, something like this, and that's why they started to explain what this came from. This is.
Are you asking or are you answering? I'm not clear what I'm sorry.
You bring this like examples that they have speaking about things that are not they are not in charge of. They have no competition, no authority.
Yeah, we're beginning to make that case.
So, this is the ideas which nobody has a competition and no one has authority.
Let's say.
So,
okay.
And from this point of view, from the scientist point of view, from this scientist, there is no reason to state something like
I agree.
Idea of God. This is not contradiction. It's
I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem with that. If you say there is there's a difference between saying that on the basis of scientific inquiry, that there does not appear to be any evidence for the existence of God, which itself, by the way, is a bit of a crazy statement because you'd have to be. But let's say there is no existence, and therefore. So there's fine, stop there, that's fine.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that.
They go...
problem I have with
there's no way to prove it.
That's, okay, you have to give me a little bit more rope here because we're just getting started. I'm less than a third of the way through the slides I wanted to get through tonight, which we're not going to, which is okay, which is fine, because I'm happy for it to be interactive.
You're like a real professor already. It's every lecture.
I'm not sure if that is a compliment or not.
No.
But I'm...
Like a lecture, there's 300 slides, you go through the first 20 in 75% of the time, the last...
Oh no, but I would rather do it slowly or properly. The point we're going to get to is if you know anything about the tenor of the debate, certainly with the new atheists, you will see the... I'm going to let them speak for themselves. It isn't it isn't just a calm civil debate. The God delusion. It's one thing to say, okay, maybe there's no evidence, but then to say delusion, God is not great. Religion is the source of all evil. It's of all evil, all. And this is, I'm only getting started. I've got a lot more coming where that came from. Jacques Monod, Nobel laureate, physiology of medicine. Man must at last wake up out of his millennial dream and discover his total solitude, his fundamental isolation. He must realize that like a gypsy, he lives on the boundary of an alien world, a world that is deaf to his music and as indifferent to his hopes as it is to his sufferings or his crimes. From a reductionist, atomist perspective, materialism, that all there is, the only thing that is real, the Ramban already spoke about this about Aristotle. The Ramban, and this is fascinating to note, I mentioned this in other shiurim, some of you will know. The fascinating difference between, let's say, the Rambam and the Ramban. The Rambam, on the one hand, in a number of respects, venerates Aristotle. He devotes 11 chapters in Moreh Nevuchim to discussing some of his ideas about the origin of existence, even though he does disagree with him. But he gives him covered, And he does say he's a tremendous chacham, and under the Galgal subluna, he is right, and he reached the Madrega just below, almost below Ruach HaKodesh in some areas of chachma, but he's still...
One step under prophecy.
Yeah, that's right. But the Ramban, on the other hand, calls him the Rosha, but he does something really, really interesting and very important, which is sort of more relevant to a Chanukah Shia, and that is hubris, arrogance. And he says the idea, says the Ramban, was because he assumed. I mean, that's what atom is. Atom is a Greek word. Atom means it cannot be broken down any further. There's a joke, right? It means if I cannot empirically, that word from the Greeks again, that word, if I cannot haul it into a laboratory, identify it, quantify it, measure it, see it, perceive it with my senses, it does not exist and can have no value. That is an arrogance. That is the Ramban's point, and that is kind of where we're going. Sorry? He wasn't an atomist, but he calls it the Ramban. I'll show you. You know the Ramban? Are you familiar with the Ramban? Have we ever discussed it? He calls him a Rosha, but he says it's that view that if it doesn't exist and has no value. You can believe in the tooth fairy. Sorry?
It's not divisible.
It's not divisible.
What's not existing about that?
No, it means, because they thought that's the smallest unit that can be observed. That's empiricism. That's materialism. But today we've gone way beyond that, as I'm going to try and show you. What?
It just cannot be divided. It means
but he was
the
part...
world... No, I thought atom means there is a sort of particle...
that cannot be divided. The
basic
unit of existence.
Is secondary. The primary is that it is a unified particle. It's one particle.
Fine.
So that what you're saying is why Ramban calls Aristotle an arrogant is because Aristotle thinks if something can't be perceived by a human being, it does not exist.
Categorized.
Metaphysics. Yeah.
So if something cannot be categorized, therefore I don't accept it, therefore I am arrogant, right? This is the argumentation.
Yes.
So that means if someone would come to Aristotle,
let's not use so much Aristotle because it might be
to Ramban and tell him, I believe that there is a certain force who makes the tables can stand like they're standing, and this is like a special force, and you can't prove it. And if Ramban tells him, no, I don't believe you, then he would be arrogant, right?
Very good. So we need to look at the different categories of what is it that people believe. There's a broad point, which is, do you say that if it isn't physical and cannot be quantified, do I dismiss anything? Then I say, then of course you can come along and say that there are, in somewhere where you can't see, it's not falsifiable, back to Karl Popper. Of course, we're not building it tonight, Rabbi Isai, I'm not building up the case for the existence of God logically or any of that stuff, I'm not doing any of that. What we're trying to do is to begin to look at some of the attitudes, as honestly as possible, of what modern scientists, where they are coming from through their own words. That's all we are doing. Yes.
Okay, so that's what you are doing now, is just showing us a number of quotes.
A sample. And I believe it to be a representative sample.
Okay, and only because you're showing us like 10, 20 quotes of this big scientists, you want to prove from that because this 20, 30 scientists are atheists, therefore science in itself is an idea.
No. Okay. I'm glad that you said that because then I've not made myself clear at all. Rega. If that is what you're hearing, then I have not said it clearly enough. Science is amazing. We need science. Not Luddites.
What's the purpose of this quote then?
Scientism.
Okay, but I don't see, if you just show me the quotes, I don't see like the big picture of scientism. Show me that there is an idea of scientism, and then I.
What do I mean when I say scientism? That's it. Okay, so let's build up a case. Like I say, I'm only getting started.
Also, I mean,
one second. Let me finish answering. Let me finish answering. The fact that a scientist, we could argue about what is cause and effect. That an atheist is more likely to be a scientist or not. That's in causation and correlation. Okay, fine. The fact is, and this is what I'm trying to build up, a representative samples of eminent scientists in their field, each of whom teach, have taught, have written, have lectured, and considered to be the fathers of their fields. So it's not just some, backwater teacher in some polytechnic somewhere. So I'm endeavouring to show, and I'm only really still at the beginning, we're not there yet, I'm going to show that there is a perspective. Science does not, the idea of the scientist as some cold, rational, clinical observer who comes from nowhere with no bias and that's what I'm moving against. Science exists within doesn't exist within a vacuum, a social or cultural vacuum. Medicine does not exist within a social or cultural vacuum. And it impacts the results that you get. And I'm only just beginning. So you have to give me a little bit more rope to show that it is broad-based enough for us to sit up and take notice and say, this is something that actually is happening in academia. That's all.
So, and you want to show and prove this from listing just quotes of big scientists. That is how we want to show and prove it.
Let's see. Let's wait and see.
Because if this is your approach, then I believe there's enough number of big scientists who believed in God, who believed that there's a higher purpose.
Why would that be relevant? Because we have no beef with science.
I understand, but if you want to prove that there's the scientism, as you call it, and you want to prove it through just showing quotes of big people, then this is not a very good argument for me.
Explain what that means, why.
Because the only thing what you're doing is just showing quotes, right?
I am going to show you that the fathers of the fields, Nobel laureates, who significant scientists in the recent past, numerous, we're just getting started. I think when you are able to demonstrate a perspective and a worldview, that's what I'm doing. That is coming from a community, as they like to, everybody nowadays is a community. So it exists. Call it scientism, call it whatever you like. I don't care what you call it. I think that's the right, and it's not just me saying it. There are, again, I didn't cull these quotes just out of nowhere. They were curated over a number of years, and I'm still collecting more. And therefore, how many quotes from those that are preeminent in their field, Nobel laureates, the majority of them, at what point, how many would you need to demonstrate that in certain very important and persuasive and influential areas of the scientific community, certain viewpoints pervade which go beyond the concept of just the fact that they are atheists? I don't care if they're atheists. I care if atheism plays a role in scientific investigation which is meant to be objective. There, maybe that's the point. Is that clearer?
Okay, that understood.
Is that a bit clearer?
Yes, but what do you do with the similar big amount of people who
not similar? No. They are tiny minority compared. First of all, you look at the statistics, and anyway, that's irrelevant.
Okay, but even that. So there are significant scientists who believe in God, and
there are some, yeah.
So therefore they use their knowledge and their understanding.
And they might be. You go on.
And their knowledge and their understanding of the world, believing that there is a God, and using this in their work as a scientist.
Amazing. Next.
So so my question is then, how do you want to prove that only because they are certain
because they say so? Well, I want to use their own words. That's exactly the point.
Okay, so I could believe that this specific person has a mindset that he doesn't believe in God, and therefore he uses this mindset in his work.
So we're back to a significant number of these people who are preeminent in their fields, and you haven't given me a chance yet to get through them, so we'll probably have to do that next week. So at what point would you say, oh right, this is not just on the case of an isolated crank or whatever? I'm not clear. All I am going to try and demonstrate is that there is significant, I would say even consensus, in the scientific community, those that shape our future in many respects. And by the way, this is not just about, I'm going to show, let me finish this. I'm going to show that this is it's not just theism versus atheism that is relevant. It is nationalism, it is money, it is bias, it is psychology. There are numerous. We're not going to get to it tonight now, but because I'm going to stop very soon. But I'm going to show you. Did you know that 90% of clinical trials for cancer drugs cannot be reproduced?
So say again?
And I'll show you the quotes and everything for it.
90% of what?
Of clinical trials that are used for the cancer drugs cannot be reproduced. 90%. What we need to do is the reproducibility crisis. I'll show you all the things afterwards. I've got the quotes. But the point is, it is not just about theism versus atheism. That's one.
Sorry, I didn't understand the argument. I don't know.
Okay.
Maybe.
The point that I am trying to make is, what I'm trying to show, we're beginning to show, is that there is, I can only state it again, and I haven't to prove it. And the question is, what would be the threshold of proof that you would be looking for?
If there would be a paper, if there
a paper by who?
Yeah.
So 10 is not good enough, but 1 is good enough for you.
No, I mean, if
What do
there
you
would
mean
be a
a
paper, so
paper?
it's like as a scientific normally as it is done in their field, they have a paper that they prove because this and this and that, and therefore we believe that there is no God or something like that. But if this is not done, if this is not done, this is a certain personal view of this specific person, or this 20 or 30 or 100 or 1,000 scientists who just believe that this is their own view.
Come down. Now, you need a theory, you need a scientific theory, and you have to show how the perception of the scientists.
I don't need a scientific theory. Sorry.
No. You need a scientific theory because you want to prove the fallacy of said theory. You want to say that
I first have to, and you haven't even built it up yet. I am less than a third of the way through trying to make my point.
Sentences and you're jumping on it.
Yeah, it's
the method, and we're not even started the shul.
Yeah.
So,
it is a sure.
No.
The point is, I think with respect, I'm losing something here.
The method is sure.
It's fine. Gershon, it's fine. The point is what I am doing. So you've had your hand up for about 20 minutes. But I'm really glad this has been interactive. I get home, my wife would say, was it interactive? I'll say, oh boy, it was interactive. I'll say it again. I think we'll stop here for tonight because I don't think we're going to make much more progress. I've got 50 or so slides. I think we got through 7 or 8, but it's fine. The point is, and I don't need to show any method or thing, I am I'm trying to show, number one, that most people, maybe less sophisticated people, maybe you're already too sophisticated, have the idea that science, as it is learnt and taught and practiced today and used to further our life and make it better, is all done by a whole bunch of cold clinical people who come at this without any biases of any sort, be they whatever they are. And I'm going to demonstrate that in one field, I'm actually not going to talk so much about nationalism or other stuff, but that it is very clear that in today, when I say today, I mean in modern science, is populated primarily and overwhelmingly by atheists. And that I don't care. I don't care if they're vegetarians or whatever. What do I care? But if they, by their own words, regularly in scientific forums, and they spout on philosophy in the media, in their books, in their things, and have an influence, and they reveal to us their visceral hate of religion and how they will not let God have a foot in the door. Professor Lewontin, Harvard, biology. We must not let God have a foot in the door. That's just the beginning. And you read, when the Financial Times calls Richard Dawkins the high priest of atheism, and they admit that he stopped being the cold clinical scientist and just looking at things from the blind watchmaker, the selfish gene, where he wrote some wonderful things. And he has become a tub-thumping, polemical, visceral, hating new atheist. And that is the tenor of the debate today. And all of those who fall into whether it's Dennett or Hitchens or Dawkins or Sam Harris and all these, and that's only the smallest, and I'm going to show that. Then this is the back of the non-vacuum within which science today is flourishing and happening. And we just need to be aware of it. That's all. It's very simple. And the way to do that is to show from their own words. And that's all I'm doing. It's very simple. Okay? It's not as scientific as perhaps you're thinking it is.